Jeffrey, is there anything about Hurricane Milton or Hurricane Helene that we're not talking about enough? I know before we started recording here, you mentioned something about flood insurance. These storms are so big, so complicated, involve so many federal agencies, local agencies, but what aren't we talking about that perhaps we should be?
I think one of the key things with the disasters we're facing is this isn't just in the domain of federal agencies, right? Our economies are wrapped up in this. And so flood insurance is one of these areas where we're seeing flood insurers pulling out of markets because of all of the payouts and all the damage that's being done. We're seeing it, and we're seeing a lot of places that are flooding at historic levels that weren't previously in a floodplain. So a lot of homeowners, a lot of renters don't have flood insurance because they aren't, according to the map, in an area that's at risk because they take into account historic risk, not projected risk with climate change. Well, what happens when we start tinkering with this and you want to buy a home and it's in an area that has flooding and you can't get insurance, you can't afford insurance, you probably can't get a lender to give you money for it, which means you can't buy that home. Or if you own that home, you can't sell it. That's your greatest source of wealth. That's how we create generational wealth in our families. And so this actually has much broader repercussions that the insurance industry is at the forefront of in terms of the increasing impacts of disasters. But this is actually something that's owned by everyone who does business within the context of these economies, within the context of these communities. And I think there's an opportunity to take a hard look at what are some of these unrecognized risks on sooner as well as longer time horizons, but also what are some of those investments that can be made? How can we better engage the private sector in this investment in resilience, understanding that we're all in this together?
Those are very good questions. And I think my final question to you is, unfortunately, Hurricane Milton might not be the last storm of hurricane season. Meteorologists say that hurricane season technically goes into November. How concerned are you about the rest of the fall from a disaster relief perspective?
Oh, I'm always worried, but I think as we get later into the season and things start to cool off, hopefully we'll see less. But there's a reason hurricane season runs that long, and I think that we'll hope for the best, but we have to prepare that this may not be the last hurricane that we see. We're seeing the Gulf at historically high temperatures. We're seeing the conditions where a lot of these storms form really ripe for additional formation. And even in the absence of that, we know that we're just seeing, other types of events. We're seeing storms, we're seeing wildfire events. And so we really do just have to sort of step back and really sort of understand risk a little bit differently and understand the value of investing and reducing that risk a lot more fully.
Jeffrey Schlegelmilch, thank you so much for joining us and breaking this down for us. We so appreciate your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.